Welcome to the Telltales channel.
I asked my mom if she got my son a birthday gift. She said, "No, he's not really my grandchild. Not by blood." I said, "Thanks for being honest." But a week later she showed up at my house in tears, right after my son said something that made her go pale. A week before Jalen's birthday, I asked my mom a simple question I didn't think would spiral into the mess that followed. "Did you get him a gift?" I expected a half-hearted yes or maybe an excuse about forgetting. Instead she said, "No, he's not really my grandchild. Not by blood." Those exact words. Calm, almost casual, like she was commenting on the weather. I didn't argue even though my stomach dropped. I just said thanks for being honest and walked out of her kitchen. But the whole drive home my hands felt stiff on the steering wheel. It was like the version of her I'd held onto for years suddenly cracked and I finally saw everything underneath. Jalen is my son from my first marriage. His father left when he was 3 and never looked back. No birthday calls, no child support, not even a postcard. I raised Jalen alone while building a marketing business from a tiny desk sandwiched between our kitchen table and the laundry basket. I worked until 2 in the morning more nights than I want to admit. Eventually the business grew, then exploded. I never changed much about our life except the essentials. Better schools, safer neighborhood, new tires when we needed them. And my parents. I helped them too. $3,000 every month for almost 2 years. They said they were drowning. Medical bills. House repairs. Groceries. My mom always said I was saving them. I never questioned it. But after that comment about Jalen, that monthly transfer suddenly felt like I was financing someone who didn't even consider my son part of her family. I didn't say anything to her immediately. I just decided I wasn't sending another dollar. Jalen's birthday rolled around. No text from her. No call. Not even a last-minute card. He kept glancing at the front window the whole evening. When he finally asked if Grandma forgot, I told him maybe she was caught up with something. He nodded, but I could tell he didn't buy it. A few days later I was on the phone with my aunt. I stood in the kitchen talking quietly, thinking Jalen was busy with his Lego set in the living room. I told my aunt everything, what my mom said, how disgusted I felt, and that I was cutting off the monthly payments. I even said my mom could call me selfish all she wanted because I didn't owe her anything after the way she talked about my kid. I figured Jalen wasn't listening. I was wrong. The next morning apparently he picked up our dusty landline and called my mom. I didn't even know he remembered how to use it. He told her, "Mommy said you're not getting the $3,000 anymore. But it's okay. I can give you my birthday money." That was enough to shake her to her core. The following Sunday she showed up at my door without warning. When I opened it she was standing there with a crumpled gift bag and eyes that were already swollen. She walked inside without waiting for an invitation. Jalen was on the couch playing a game, completely unaware of the storm she carried in with her. The moment my mom saw him her expression changed. She looked like she was trying not to gasp. Then she asked if we could talk privately. I didn't move. I just stood there. She asked again, this time quieter. Then she looked at Jalen and said, "What did he hear?" That's when I realized she wasn't here to apologize. She wasn't here for Jalen's sake. She was terrified. Terrified that her golden stream of monthly support might actually be gone. I stayed silent. He kept asking, "Did he hear you say something about money, Connie? Did you tell him to call me?" I didn't answer. She already knew. She was in my house panicking because for the first time the power dynamic had flipped. Jalen was still tapping at his controller, completely unaware of how deeply he'd rattled her. And I just let her squirm. Because she'd said it herself, he wasn't really her grandchild. This was only the first shift in a week that would get so much uglier than I expected. I didn't tell her to leave, but I didn't tell her to sit down either. She stood there in the middle of my living room holding that cheap gift bag like it was supposed to fix everything. Jalen paused his game when he noticed her, walked over and hugged her like he always used to. She froze for a second. I watched her stiffen. That's when I knew she felt guilt, but not the kind that changes someone. Just the kind that makes them desperate. She handed him the bag and mumbled something about being late. He smiled, told her it was okay. He pulled out a hoodie that still had the price tag hanging off the sleeve. She'd obviously grabbed it last minute. But he didn't care. He said thanks and ran off to his room to try it on. The second he was out of sight she turned to me. "Connie, I didn't mean it like that." I didn't say anything. She went on. Said she was just frustrated that day, that she's been feeling left out ever since Jalen got older, that it was a stupid thing to say and I took it too seriously. I stood there and let her ramble like someone trying to blow out a fire with their breath. But the one thing she didn't say? That she was sorry. She didn't say she was wrong. And she didn't ask what Jalen might have felt when she disappeared on his birthday. Instead she tried to shift it to me. Asked why I'd talk about money where my kid could hear it. Said he shouldn't be worrying about adult things. That he probably misunderstood. I told her he understood perfectly. He heard exactly what he needed to. Then I walked to the front door, opened it, and stood there. She didn't move right away, just stared at me like she couldn't believe I was doing this. Then she stepped out and said she hoped I'd calm down soon. That we're family and nothing changes that. As soon as the door closed, I locked it. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought maybe finally I could draw a line. But I underestimated her. 2 days later my dad called. Said he didn't understand what was going on, but Mom had been crying non-stop. That she was saying I hated her now. That she felt like she didn't belong in her own family anymore. I asked him if she told him what she said about Jalen. There was a pause. Then he said she did, but she didn't mean it the way it sounded. And that's when I knew he was going to take her side. No matter what she said, no matter what she did, he was going to protect her version of the story. The manipulation started small. She posted a vague message on Facebook the next day. Nothing hurts more than being treated like a stranger by your own child. Tag nobody. But everyone who knew us knew what it was about. Then came the calls from relatives I hadn't spoken to in months. Asking if I was okay. Telling me life was short. That family comes first. That grudges only grow if you feed them. None of them asked what my mom had done. They didn't care. The story had already been rewritten. Now she was the victim. And I was the cold daughter cutting off her parents after all they'd done. Jalen noticed the shift. He asked why Grandma wasn't coming around anymore. Why Grandpa sounded sad on the phone. He even apologized one night. Said he didn't mean to cause trouble. I told him he didn't. That he did the right thing. But I could tell it weighed on him. He's only 10, but he sees more than people realize. And then came the moment I didn't see coming. A letter. Handwritten. Slid into our mailbox without a stamp. From my mom. It said, "I'm not perfect, but I don't deserve to be erased. I will not beg, but I will remember this." She signed it, Mom, like it was some courtroom statement. And that's when I knew she wasn't backing down. She was just getting started. After the letter, I expected things to go quiet. I figured she'd stew in her pride for a while, maybe realize I wasn't going to play along this time. But instead it all turned into a performance. Not for me, for everyone else. First it was subtle. I'd see her name pop up in the likes, under posts from people I hadn't thought about in years. Then one day she commented on an old photo of Jalen I'd posted back in 2018, writing something like, "Miss these days so much." When family was still close. That post had been untouched for years. She knew exactly what she was doing. Then the calls started coming. Not from her. From people I barely spoke to. One was my mom's old friend Nancy. She left a voicemail saying, "I don't want to pry, but your mother is so heartbroken, Connie." She said she doesn't know what she did wrong. "You only get one mom. Just think about it." Then came the text. "Your mom told me you're not speaking. That doesn't sound like you. Saw your mom at the store. She looked so sad. You two should talk. Life's too short. Hey, I heard about the thing with your son. Maybe just clear the air?" They made it sound like we'd had a little disagreement. A misunderstanding. No one had the full story because she never told anyone what she said. Just that I cut her off and refused to forgive. And it was working. People were buying it. Meanwhile, she didn't try to reach out directly again. Instead, she used my dad. He started calling more often. Always early, always on weekdays. Sometimes I let it go to voicemail, sometimes I picked up. He kept things light at first. Asked how Jalen was doing, how work was going, but it always turned. Every single time. "Your mom's not doing well. She's not sleeping. He cries all the time now." She said she's never felt so unwanted. I stopped replying after a while, but the voicemails kept coming. He started saying things like, "I'm not saying you have to forgive her, just don't punish her like this." That word again. Punish. Like choosing not to fund someone who disrespected my child was cruel. She started posting vague things on Facebook next. I saw them because she didn't block me. She wanted me to see them. Family isn't about DNA. It's about who shows up. So sad when people forget that. Nothing hurts more than watching your child become a stranger. Grandkids are the light of our lives. Some of us just want to be included. People flooded her comments with sympathy. Some messaged me directly. One even asked if I was having some kind of mental health struggle. But none of them asked what she had said about Jalen. Because she never told them. Then she did something that really crossed a line. She started texting me pictures. Old ones. Me and Jalen when he was a baby. Him asleep in her arms. Her pushing him in a stroller. Him opening a Christmas present on her couch. She sent them late at night. No message. Just pictures. One every couple of days. Like she was trying to remind me of something. Or guilt me into rewriting history. Then the final push came. She got to Jalen. He'd answered the house phone, the one we almost never use, and I came in halfway through the call. It was my dad. I heard Jalen say, "It's okay, Grandpa. Mommy just said no more money right now. She's not mad." I took the phone and hung up without saying anything. Jalen looked at me and asked if I was mad. I told him I wasn't mad. I was just tired of people pretending to love us and only showing up when they needed something. He nodded, then sat next to me and started organizing his Pokemon cards. Later that night while I was working, he looked up and asked, "You're still not sending them money, right?" I said, "No, I'm not." He nodded again. "It's good. You should save it. For me. Or for you. We don't give it to people who don't show up." That stung. Not because he was wrong, but because I knew where he got those words from. Me. I'd said something like that once when he was 7, after a classmate only wanted to hang out because Jalen brought fruit snacks to school. He remembered. And now he was repeating it about my parents. I didn't say anything. I just stared at the screen while he went back to organizing his cards. But the guilt was creeping back in. Not because they deserved anything. Because no matter how much damage they caused, they were still my parents. And that's what they were counting on. They weren't trying to fix anything. They were trying to win. A week passed without a word. No calls, no texts, no surprise photos of Jalen as a toddler. Just quiet. I should have felt relief. But instead it put me on edge. Like the silence was part of a build-up. I was half right. It was a Thursday morning when I got a message from my cousin Tiffany. We weren't close. She lived in Oregon and usually only posted pictures of her garden and her dogs. The message just said, "You might want to check this." Attached was a screenshot. My mom had written a long Facebook post, public, and this time she named me directly. She didn't write it like a bitter parent. She wrote it like a eulogy. It said I had cut her and my dad off without warning. That I had accused her of being a bad grandmother over a misunderstanding. That I'd blocked her from seeing Jalen, who she described as the only light in her life. She wrote about how devastated she was, how confused, how deeply abandoned she felt. And then came the kicker. We never asked her for a dime. We only ever asked to be loved. I guess that wasn't enough. I stared at those words for a long time. Never asked for a dime? $3,000. Every month. For almost 2 years. She framed it like I was some selfish, cold, money-obsessed daughter who held my own child hostage out of spite. In the comments, God, they flooded in. Strangers telling her she was strong. That kids today are heartless. That she should pray for me. One person even wrote, "You did your best. Some people are just broken." Got hundreds of likes. That afternoon, I picked Jalen up from school like usual, and as we were walking back to the car, I noticed a woman watching us. One of the other moms. I didn't know her name, but she knew mine. She smiled tightly, then walked over. She said, "You're Connie, right?" I said, "Yeah." She lowered her voice and said, "I just want you to know, your mom loves you. It's clear. I don't know the details, but maybe you could be the bigger person. For Jalen's sake." She smiled again and walked away before I could even respond. Jalen looked up at me. "What was that about?" I shook my head. Nothing important. But inside something snapped. I wasn't going to let her rewrite the story. I wasn't going to let her turn me into the villain in her sad little tale. So I did something I hadn't done since this started. I called her. She picked up on the second ring like she'd been waiting for this moment. I said, "You need to take it down." She didn't deny anything. Didn't pretend she didn't know what I meant. He just said, "Maybe people need to hear my side." I asked her again. Calmly. She said she'd think about it. That night she didn't take it down. But something else happened. My dad showed up at my house. Unannounced. Alone. I opened the door ready to tell him to leave, but he held up his hands and said, "Just hear me out." He sat on my porch. Told me he knew about the post, didn't agree with it. Said he told her not to make things worse, but she wouldn't listen. Then he pulled out a folded envelope and handed it to me. I opened it. Inside was a check. Written out to me. $18,000. He said it was all the money I'd sent them. Every last cent. He said they didn't want to owe me anything anymore. I just stared at him. I didn't even know what to say. Then he stood up and said, "You don't trust us. And maybe you have your reasons. But at least now you can't say we took anything from you." He walked back to his truck and drove off. That night, I sat at the table with Jalen and asked him how he'd feel about seeing Grandma and Grandpa again. He said, "If you want to. But only if they don't make you sad again." I nodded. Then I put the check in a drawer and didn't touch it. Because I knew this wasn't over. They weren't returning the money out of pride. They were trying to clear the board. So they could start over and twist it all again. The check stayed in the drawer untouched but never out of mind. I'd glance at it every time I opened that cabinet like it was trying to guilt me into believing they were the bigger people now. They weren't. I knew that. They were just playing a longer game. After a few days of silence, the pity parade dried up. No more posts. No more text messages from family friends. It felt intentional. Like they'd thrown their last punch and were just waiting for me to crawl back. And I did. Not because I missed them. Not because I believed any of it had changed. but because Jalen was too young to understand why his grandparents vanished after one phone call. He kept asking when we'd see them again, and I got tired of lying. So I called her. I kept it short. I said she could come see Jalen Sunday afternoon if she wanted. Her response was immediate, like she'd been waiting next to the phone for me to break. She didn't say thank you. She said that's a good idea. I was just thinking the same thing. She showed up in full performance mode. Hair curled, matching sweater set, banana bread in a foil container and a gift bag in her hand like we were the ones who had wronged her. She hugged Jalen like she hadn't ignored his birthday entirely just weeks ago. He was beaming, of course. He missed her. He didn't know any better. She sat on the couch with him and asked about school, basketball tryouts, what games he was playing lately. It was all smooth, well rehearsed. She didn't look at me until the very end when she stood up and said, "I hope this is the start of something better." I didn't answer. Just nodded. That was all she needed. 2 days later she sent me a text asking what model water heater we installed when ours went out last year. Said theirs broke. I told her. She thanked me. That night she followed up with, "I hate to ask this, but is there any way you could help cover part of it? Just until the 15th? $700. And just like that, the door cracked open again. I transferred the money. Told myself it was a one-time thing. Told myself I was doing it for Jalen. But I knew better. Because 2 weeks after that it was the car insurance. Then it was the property tax they forgot about. Then it was that my dad's medication was out of pocket now. Always small asks. Spread out just enough to seem harmless. Nothing like before. But steady. I didn't tell Jalen. I didn't want to confuse him. But one night while we were watching a movie he turned to me and said, "Did Grandma say sorry yet?" I blinked. I hadn't even thought about it in days. No, I said. He didn't. He thought for a second. Then said, "But you're giving her money again?" I said, "Just a little. Not like before." He didn't say anything after that. Just nodded slowly, like he was solving a puzzle in his head that I hadn't even started. That same week my dad texted asking if we'd be open to Thanksgiving at their place this year. It was August. Not even close. But I knew what it meant. They were trying to secure their position. Get back to where they were before. And truthfully I let it happen. Because it was easier than the fight. The money wasn't what hurt. It was how easy it was for them to slip back into the role of the wrong party. And how easily I stepped back into the role of the peacekeeper. Then something strange happened. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but I picked up. It was a man from a local plumbing company. He said he wanted to confirm the time for the water heater install at my parents' address. I paused and asked him when the order was placed. He said 3 weeks ago. Paid in full by them. Paid in full. They didn't need my $700. They'd already handled it. They just asked anyway. I hung up and stared at the phone for a while. They hadn't changed. They were just smarter now. I was quiet the rest of the night. Didn't say anything to Jalen. But while he was brushing his teeth, he peeked into the kitchen and said, "You're not sad again, are you?" I forced a smile. Said no. But I was. Not because I felt betrayed. Because I let them back in, knowing full well what they were. And they were counting on that. Because manipulation only works when you pretend not to see it. I didn't confront them about the water heater. I kept thinking I would. I'd picture the whole conversation. Me laying it all out, her scrambling to explain, me walking away for good this time. But I never did it. Instead, I let it sit in the back of my mind like a loose screw you keep telling yourself you'll fix later. And somehow, after everything, I went back to helping them. Quietly. Gradually. A few hundred here, a bill there. No fanfare. No acknowledgement. And they never asked directly again. That was the part that got me. They didn't have to. The money just started flowing again like muscle memory. I wired it before they even asked because I already knew what was coming next. She sent thank you emojis. Once she wrote, "Appreciate you." But mostly she stayed quiet and let me fill the silence. I think she understood that it wasn't forgiveness. It was surrender. Jalen didn't say much about it either. He was seeing them regularly again. Sunday lunches, occasional school pickups, phone calls where she talked to him like she'd never told me he wasn't really her grandchild. He was trying to believe the version of her he had in his head. The sweet grandma. The one who brought banana bread and bought him hoodies. And I wasn't going to be the one to destroy that for him. But she did that on her own. One Wednesday afternoon, Jalen came into the kitchen while I was finishing up a report and said, "Grandma told me you used to give her $3,000 a month. Is that true?" I didn't react right away. I asked where she told him that. He said she brought it up in the car on the way to their house. She said, "Your mom used to take such good care of us. She was so generous back then." And then she laughed and said, "I don't know what happened." Jalen said it like he was confused. Like he didn't know if she meant it as a joke or a complaint. I didn't tell him the whole story. I just said, "Grandma shouldn't talk to you about things like that." He nodded and walked away. But I stood in the kitchen for a long time after he left. He was trying to turn him. Not just keep him close, turn him. Start small, build trust, plant quiet little stories that rewrote history. The victim narrative again, but this time directed at a 10-year-old. I texted her that night. I said, Jalen told me what you said. Don't bring up money around him. Not once. Not ever. She didn't reply until the next morning. She said, I was just proud of you. You've always done so much. I didn't mean anything by it. No apology. Just that. Then my dad called the next day. Told me mom had been quiet all morning. Said she wasn't eating. That she felt like I was pulling away again. That she didn't know how to fix things anymore. I didn't even respond. Just let him talk until he ran out of things to say. That weekend I told Jalen we weren't going to their house for lunch. I said I had too much work. He didn't push. Just nodded. But later that night he asked why do they always want something. I asked him what he meant. He said they're nice but I always feel like they're trying to get me to like them too much. Like extra. That hurt more than anything. Because I could hear myself in his voice. I could hear how much he was watching even when I thought he wasn't. And yet, the next morning I sent my mom $400 to cover a missed gas bill, she hinted at during a text. I told myself I was doing it to keep the peace. But that night after Jalen fell asleep, I sat in the living room staring at the TV volume low, and realized I didn't even know who I was trying to keep the peace for anymore. Them, me, or the kid sleeping down the hall, trying to figure out which version of his family was real. Maybe all of this started with a phone call. Or maybe it started the moment I let people treat my son like a favor instead of family. But either way I'm in it now. The money's moving again. The conversations are polite. Jalen's caught somewhere in the middle. And I'm sitting here, unsure of whether I've taken back control, or handed it over completely.